You're listening to the Para is My Normal podcast. We are a bit science, a bit woo, and all curious about that which defies explanation because sometimes normal just isn't.
Well, hello. I'm today's host, Jenniferlyn. Unfortunately, my husband had to go to work today, so I will be flying solo. But today is a very special episode because with us we have our guest, Lauren Haunts. Hello, Lauren.
Hello. I'm
Now,
so sorry.
you may
Nobody should have
recognize
to
her.
work,
No, I know, especially not on a Sunday, right? What do they say? If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
right?
Unfortunately, that's not the reality. But this is fun, so we enjoy it.
Good. I'm
So,
glad.
Lauren, where can we find you? Now, I know I've met you at Ohio State Reformatory and, of course, on the Paracon circuit back when I lived in Michigan. We met you up at the Michigan Paracon, RIP, which is so sad, honestly. So where can people find you, like, in normal days? How would they come across to you?
Well, virtually, if you type in Lauren Haunts to any search bar, I do pop up. I am very proud of that. So nobody go trying to take Lauren Haunts, although it is trademarked. So, but, and then honestly, I have a couple of like regular haunts in Ohio. So the Ohio State Reformatory, I'm actually on their resident paranormal team. So
Nice.
you can usually find me every year at Parapsychon. This year I am speaking at this year's Parapsychon, so that's very exciting.
Nice. That's really great.
I know, I'm very excited about that. So Parapsychon, and then also Madison Seminary in Madison, Ohio. I am there all the time.
Really?
And I have oh my gosh, yes, I have a permanent installation, like an experimental installation there that I'm doing like a little kind of social study on there. And then Hillview Manor in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, another frequent place that I'm at all the time. So yeah, so if you're in Ohio, it's like a high chance that you might run into me if you're at either of any of those places, because that's where I am all the time.
I want to hear a little bit more about your origination story, if you will. So how did you get into the paranormal? Because I'm very curious of that.
I think it was just, so I didn't grow up in like a haunted house or anything. I didn't have, an experience or saw a ghost when I was young, or not that there's anything wrong. I unfortunately didn't have like a cool, spooky origin story. My mother was a reading teacher and she always kept a ton of books in the house. And she was also a big like horror fan. So a lot of Dean Koontz on the Stephen King, Dean Koontz, she was a Dean Koontz girl, stories. And I got a hold of some of her books and I started probably reading Dean Koontz at a very, very young age. And so it was more like the monsters and sort of like cryptids kind of thing that I really got into young. And then progressing on, still just being like the weird horror kid, the pipeline from like horror enthusiast to paranormal is like pretty straightforward. So being the sort of like horror book nerd, progressing into different interests, being interested into just like ghosts and ghouls and witchcraft and all of those things. But then it was in 2004 on the Sci-Fi Channel when Ghost Hunters first debuted that I was like, oh my gosh, there are people that do this stuff for like a living. Like that's goals. Are you kidding me? And so I was like, this can be a job. These people have like a normal day job and then they hunt ghosts at night. That's amazing. That's so cool. So I started to get into the paranormal stuff and the ghost hunting and doing whatever I can as like a 19-year-old, which wasn't too heck of a lot. Everything was way too expensive. You couldn't even really get a lot of the like electrical equipment that we would see now. Even just in 2004, it was either like horrifically expensive or they were just using like electricians equipment.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff, like the thermal imaging and things like that, they were plumbers and electricians use thermal imaging, EMF meters, things like that. Just very like standard. You could get it at well, it was for me, it was Paul's Do It Center. That was the
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Like
was
your
the
local electrician
hardware
store?
store. There was that, and then there was like another mom and pop place. I'd be like, I'm looking for this. And they're like, what's the project that you're doing? And I'm like, fixing the toilet. And they're like, well, you don't need this and this and this. And I'm like, I'll do this, okay? And they're just like, what the? Somebody get your kid. But I was always, though, still kind of nerdy. It probably wasn't until like high school that I really started neglecting school. There was a lot of, kind of mental health stuff. My parents had gotten divorced at a young age and things like that. So, all that stuff. And
To
but
go
before
through.
that, yeah. So it was a lot to figure out, which I think pushes you even more into the sci-fi stuff, the paranormal stuff, because it's really good, like escapism.
100%. You can create your own world, or it's like a whole new universe, right? That you can uncover, and it gives you an opportunity just to dig in and kind of be like, well, we can ignore that for a while.
Yep,
That's a
there's
tomorrow
a lot
problem.
of wonder and a lot of just like you can go and you can explore and you can have adventures and I would wander through the woods and go to, cemeteries and things like that too. So it was just good escapism on that. But I didn't have my first paranormal experience until I was like 24 years old, probably. I mean, not
Really?
that I,
So that's impressive that you kind of kept going too without having the experiences. And
yeah,
then, right?
yeah, I had, it wasn't for like a lack of trying, I guess. No, 24 was when I had like, when I was like, well, the whole time I think I just was very much like a believer in it all. But 24, it was like, it happened. It happened. It's like that. I like to equate it to almost like being obsessed with like a celebrity or something. Like that they're a real that they're a person and that they exist somewhere, but you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna be able to meet them. They're so amazing. I watch all their movies, I know everything about them. It's so great. And then like the day that you meet like you're like the celebrity that you've loved, you're just like, oh my God, it's happening. All my training. I don't even know what to do right now. And that's
Everything
kind
just
of
escapes.
yeah. And it was just not not scared, no like what? Nothing like that. It was just very anticlimactic, but also like this happened. I feel like it's almost like your brain isn't computing things.
Yeah. Almost like it's buffering.
Yeah.
Like literally. And I think it's because when we think of the paranormal or that unknown, so often in the movies and the sensational things we see, it's shock factor, the jump scare, the ooh, the floating sheet type deal. And I think if we're looking for that, that's genuinely something you're going to react to in a gasping, scary way. But when
At this
you have
point,
an
I don't even know if
experience,
we will.
honestly, I don't think so.
Okay. Before I get ahead of myself. So the experience that happened was I lived in a building that was built in like the early 1900s. It was called Riddle Block number 9. It's in downtown Ravenna. It's still there. And it was my first apartment at 24 years old. And I had moved into there. And of course, it was my first place. I was all by myself, super freaked out. And I was like, I'm going to go adopt a cat. So I went and I adopted my first little baby Chandler. And he always loved to go into the bathroom and knock over the trash can constantly. Knock over the trash can. Go into the bathroom. He's going to knock over the fucking trash can. Oh, go into the bathroom. Always knock over the trash can. Knock over the trash can. So my living room was set up so that my couch was like against the far wall, TV here, and I could see the hallway that the bathroom was down. So you could always have eyes on the whole apartment. It was a very small apartment. And one day I'm watching a movie. I don't remember what movie I was watching, but I see Chandler walk across the hallway from my bedroom into the bathroom. And I was like, he's going to knock over the trash can. And the light switched on. No trash can knocked over. He ran out. Light switched on and he ran out. And that's when I was like, and then my brain was like, go look. And I'm like, I don't know what happened right now. So I get up and I'm like walking and I like look in the bathroom, trash can's intact. And I just like peek my head and I'm like, thank you. And that was it. And that was really the only time I ever experienced something in that apartment. And I lived there for a few years. And fast forward, my mom was very highly educated, wildly intelligent woman, loved horror, was never really into paranormal. So I had to pull her out of my childhood home, and I talked her into moving next door to me because I could at least hopefully keep an eye on her. So I moved her
Yeah,
into
keep
my
her
old
safe.
apartment. Yeah, my old apartment, and I moved to the bigger apartment next door. So she's in my old apartment, the one that I had this experience in. I never had told her about that stuff. And then I am now being way more interested. I'm investigating my friends' places, and then I end up talking to I end up being on this tour, like this kind of spooky tour that I ended up leading through downtown Ravenna. And I did a lot of the stuff with like the historical society and did all this research and found all these different like haunted stories. And I ended up hosting a tour for the library where I walked people around Ravenna and I told these ghost stories, and we went into my building and we did some stuff with like paranormal investigative equipment and all this stuff. And after that, like while I was doing all this research and talking about ghost stories, and I was asking people in the building, like, do you have any ghost stories? And I'm like, Mom, do you have any ghost stories? And she was like, actually, I do. And I was like, you do? Okay. And she was like, yeah. She's like, and it's here. And I'm like, what do you mean it's here? Like, tell me. And she was like, I was woken up in the middle of the night while I was sleeping with somebody saying my name. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, it was so late. And I even walked out in the hallway because I thought maybe it was Susan, her upstairs neighbor, like messing with me. And she's like, but nobody was out there. And I remember opening my eyes and hearing this voice just going, Linda, Linda. And like, that's exactly how she said it. And I'm like, that's really crazy. And she's like, and with dementia, you get sort of like you regress in your memories. So you start to remember things from earlier in your life come up in your mind and you will start to talk about it. Come to find out, she had spent time in that apartment building when she was little because that was her grandma's apartment.
What?
My first apartment was my great grandmother's apartment.
Grandmother's apartment. Like, that's
And then I
kismet.
moved
That
my
is like, you
mom
can't even plan.
into that
Wow.
apartment.
My word.
So she hadn't really realized that when I moved her in, because she was like, this building, every time I would like, she had only been in there a few times when I first moved in there, and she's like, but this building, every time I come in here, it feels so familiar. It feels so familiar. And yeah, so that was her grandmother's apartment in the building.
That is
And my first
amazing.
apartment was my great grandmother's apartment. Yeah. And I'm adopted, so I never knew much about my mom's family, my dad's family, nothing, because they weren't my family. So like I never learned a ton about, where their families came from or anything. So yeah, so that was so super crazy, just like a full circle moment kind of thing.
No kidding. That had to be just like, wait, what? Stop the presses. What
Yeah,
just happened?
I was like,
Like, how did this?
that's insane, Mom. Yeah, I was like, that's crazy.
Like, what are the odds?
And
What
she's
are
like,
the odds that you would end up there?
yeah. And she was very just like, oh, yeah, whatever. Okay. All
So yeah,
right.
that happened. And then
Yeah.
And that's where it all began. What started as a personal fascination, a quiet pull towards the unknown, has grown into something so much bigger. Today, Lauren is no longer just the curious kid peeking behind the curtain. She's become a trusted voice in the paranormal field. Under the name Lauren Haunts, she built a platform that blends research, storytelling, and investigation in a way that's both grounded and deeply compelling. So how did that spark evolve into a full-blown presence in the community? Let's take a look at what Lauren Haunts has come to represent.
And that's kind of like what I was like, that's so cool. And that also is sort of what got me into this, like, the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Because my one scenario was really, really interesting, but then you pair that up and it becomes a bigger picture. So like the big picture kind of storylines were very, very interesting. And it started with big picture of like ghosts, right? Like deceased human beings, deceased human energy. There's a bigger picture, there's history, there's always a bigger picture to it. And then that sort of progressed as I went into, there's a bigger picture with how we're using equipment. And then there's a bigger picture with what are we documenting and why are we documenting this stuff with equipment? And now there's this even bigger picture of like, are ghosts even real, or is this just a tiny percentage of the much bigger picture? And now I'm going back to school for physics. I don't know.
That was one of the
Start in
things I had
August.
highlighted. That is exciting. Congratulations. I think that's actually really cool. And I think that's something that when you have the passion and you feel drawn to it, to truly try to understand it at that level, I think is super commendable, first of all, because it definitely shows your commitment to what you do and just who you are, and to understand the physical world as we currently know it. So you got into the paranormal, but how did that shift into really like a tech focus or a deeper understanding of the science side?
It is, and it's a slippery slope. Like the how do you know it works if you don't know how it works is the slipperiest slope ever. Because at first it's just how does it work mechanically, and then how does it work with like false positives, and then how does it work when it is, when it is being triggered properly. But then why would that be triggering this? Why do we think that this energy is made of that? But what about energy is a plethora of things. It's not just, and it's like, it's a, and then you're like, wow, I just wanted to know how a REM pod worked. And now I'm studying physics and math.
I always critically thought things like breaking it apart. How does this work? What's going on? So, coming from a farming community and ending up in engineering wasn't really like my parents were like, where did this come from? And now I'm like, the universe works in mysterious ways. I really think it was to get me to where I am today and to understand and to question and be critical thinking. So I think that's cool that you trace the rabbit down the rabbit hole and you're like, oh, well,
Still
now
going.
I can't stop. Yeah, now
Yeah.
I can't stop. We're just starting. We're just starting.
So there's all that. And my dad's just going to be like, cause of ghosts. And I'm like, yes, dad, cause of ghosts.
Because it goes, yes, but it leads to so much more.
Yeah. And the catalyst to all of this was literally because I just like wanted to know how a REM pod worked, like legit.
That
So
is so cool.
I'm on the resident paranormal team at the Ohio State Reformatory, Tri-C Ghost Hunters, one of the biggest paranormal investigative teams in the state of Ohio. And we put on the Parapsychon every year. And you have to have certain pieces of equipment in order to be on the team and to do the residentials and things like that. So I'm getting this equipment and it's also very expensive. And I'm like, I can't actually afford any of this crap. What the heck? So I'm like, I'm just going to get the bare minimum. The biggest thing that I wanted, I was really into like photography and videography and editing and things like that. So I'm like, this is a great excuse to get a really nice camera. But I didn't really get a ton of other stuff. I just got like I got like I got this. I actually got this. It was like a knockoff REM pod,
Oh,
which I
yeah.
mean works perfectly fine. It's great.
Yep.
Went on a few hunts and then went on a hunt with Kathy and Greg Ficatic, who are now like two of my best friends.
Oh, they're great.
If
We've met them quite a few times. They are really
Yeah,
good.
but Greg has Kathy and Greg have plethora. They have a plethora of equipment. We were somewhere and I'm going through all of this equipment Greg has. I'm like, oh my God, you have so much stuff. And he had a little proximity sensor that looked like this, and it had an antenna and it had a light on the front and it had like somebody's sticker on it or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, this is darling. Look at this. This is so cute. What is this? And he's like, oh, it's a REM pod, but it doesn't work. And I'm like, I could probably fix it. If it doesn't work, can I take it and take it apart? And he's like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I go and I take it apart at home. And I'm just like, this is like really simple. I fix it. And so with my parents being divorced and my mom, I grew up in like just with my mom, and she had a lot of like mental health issues and things like that too. So I had to learn how to fix things a lot from a young
Okay.
age. Fixed build, things like that. So I had always been, my first apartment, I'm pretty sure I built 90% of the furniture. I, did the plumbing. I did a lot of stuff of just being able to learn how to fix something because when I was growing up, I needed to do that.
That necessity that drove, okay, this is something that I'm going to have my own tools and I'm just going to learn how to do it. And you're self-sufficient too, which is really like kind of cool when you can say, hey, I built that. I fixed that. Like if I saw the broken REM pod, I'd be like, well, that's a shame.
So this was the whole catalyst to paranormal equipment. I ended up fixing it for Greg. He still has it. It's now on his shelf. He made me sign it. I was like, man, I could do this. And so I made a couple of these, and then I was like, something pretty. And I had a lot of crystals because I used to own like a yogic practice studio.
Oh,
And so I did like a ton of crystals and stuff. And I'm like, and I'm very crafty. So this was the very first one I ever built. And I built it for myself.
hmm.
And it's hilarious because like I like roughly cut out like all these holes. So they're like it's really funny. I did kind of like I fixed her because I wasn't like the best at soldering when I first started doing this. So I have since, because you have to like, it's not really micro soldering, but like a little bit, kind of very small space that you're soldering
Intricate.
with. So, but I have since like fixed her. So she does work like nicely now. So, but yeah,
Very nice.
she was my first little crystal pod, and I brought it to a vendor show because I was doing vendor shows for like witchcraft stuff. I wrote a book on witchcraft, and I used to teach workshops on just like practical applications and meditation and manifesting and just like ways to form a relationship with yourself through practicing witchcraft. And
Cool.
so I was doing vendor shows with that, and it was one of the Adam Kimmel cons. So it may have been MadCon maybe. But I brought it to a vendor show because I was going to do the ghost hunt. And so, but I had it out because it was pretty and it was sunny. And I'm like, I had it out, and people were like, what is that? And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh,
very eye-catching.
yeah. I was like, this is my little REM pod that I make. Cause I was still calling them REM pods. I'm like, oh, it's my little REM pod that I made. And people were like, is that for sale? And I'm like, well, no, it's just, it's just mine. And they were like, can I buy that? And I'm like, no,
No, it's
it's
mine.
mine. And they were like, well, you should sell those. And I'm like, well, not everything I make I have to sell. Thank you very much. But then it was like, can I buy that? Can I buy that? What is that? Can I have one? I want one. Can you make me one? Can you do this? And just constant. Take my first
Hunger.
child. And I'm like, I don't want that. And I was like,
I will
should
take your
I?
first dog though.
Right. Right. And I'm like, should I like make a few? And so I was like, well, I'll make some. And so I made like a batch, and I took them to HillCon at Hillview Manor. And that was where I sold my first crystal pod. And it was actually
Aw.
one of the workers saw them, bought it, and then they like went and they were like, oh my God, look at this that I got. And then all the workers just like sold me out. And then they were posting pictures and advertising. And then every show I would go to, I just started selling out, and I sold out every show for like 2 years. And because this would be like my fourth year, it was very quick, very
Holy
quick.
cow.
And then I brought this with me to the Ohio State Reformatory after Parapsychon one year for an event with Dave Giuliano. And I brought this with me. And he was like, what is that? And I was like, by that point, I had named it the Crystal Pod. And I was like, oh, it's the Crystal Pod. It's a, proximity sensor, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I want to sell those. And I was like, okay, cool. He has the Ghost Hunter store, which
Yeah.
is the first online paranormal equipment store was the Ghost Hunter
Really?
store with Dave Giuliano. Yeah, he's like an OG in the paranormal that I don't think people realize just how much of an OG he is. Like,
No, I had no idea.
he started the first online ghost hunter store for equipment. Like, yeah, he's done a lot, and I don't think people really realize it. And they should.
Because where do we get our tech? There's only so many places. Now I think there's more, right? With like Etsy
Yeah.
shops and people building and right. But if you think about just a couple years ago, like really, where would you go to get your tech, right? The Ghost Hunter store, Ghost Stop, right? There's only a few places that you would actually go for it. So that's really cool. I didn't know. And interesting with the Ghost Hunter store, he has so much more than just the paranormal. He has the whole spiritual side.
Yes.
I'm always like just kind of perusing just to see like, what is all this? It's kind of fascinating to
He
see
has a ton of
all
stuff
the
on
tech
there.
in one place. It's really
Mhm.
neat.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff on there. He has a lot. And he has a lot of stuff that you can't get other places because they're not people that build stock like me. I don't make stock of Crystal Pod. When you order the Crystal Pod from the Ghost Hunter store, I am making it for you. So I know who this is going to while I'm making it, because at the end of the day too, people see me as this like very like sciencey nerdy person. I am a very like witchy ass bitch, y'all.
I love it.
Like I
Multidimensional.
love math and things making sense and physics and like how the universe works. But like you can have balance and have, which I guess I'm glad that people don't really see me as the like witchy spiritual person. And I'm trying to get that out there a little bit more. But it there is something that is very important to me to make sure that when I'm making a piece, that's why most of my stuff is made to order. Actually, all of my stuff is made to order.
Yeah. So in building it, then do you put some intention into each of the pieces?
As always, I
for
know
that
who
person?
it's. Oh yeah.
So there's that connection immediately, and it's like this was made for this person. It's no one else's, for them, and I think that's really special. Actually.
Yeah, and even though you're ordering, one amethyst pod with the hundreds of people that might have an amethyst pod, it's very specifically done with. It was made for you. It wasn't just made and shipped to you. I know the name of the person that I'm putting those crystals on top for.
I
And
like
it's the
that,
same
really.
thing with like when I pour your emerald seer, then like that's going to be done with you, and yeah. And when I squirt a shit ton of gold sparkles into it,
Yeah, all the sparkles.
yeah. So yeah, it's always made to order. And I really enjoy that now.
For me, it's deeper understanding. It's layers. And it's this deeper understanding. We start like at that ghost hunting entertainment level that's like exciting. What is going on? This is crazy.
Can't stress that enough. It's okay to stay there. Especially if
Yes,
you're just
because
doing
it's
this for
fun.
fun. Yes.
Fun.
Yeah.
I love, honestly, not gonna lie, when things go, you're like, ooh, it is fun and exciting. And Ghost Hunters as a show is so, how that all of a sudden we have this thing, and I was like, wait, does that mean it's real? And then all of a sudden there's all those paranormal shows. And it's like, oh my gosh, look at these techniques. Look at what they're doing. What's that tech? What's going on? And you just get to the point where it's like only special people with special skills can go and do this thing, ghost hunting. But then you realize, no, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. And you don't need $1 million of gear, literally a flashlight, whatever, just yourself, right? Whatever level you want to experience it, it doesn't mean the people with all the tech are having a better experience than you are. So how do you balance the idea of just like existing in a space and usage of tech, maybe like using it for a purpose versus overly relying on tech?
A lot. It's the planning, like the goal for the location. Like what's my goal? If I don't have a goal, like if it's not like I want to try out these things together and this and this and that and see what happens, then it's purely just an experience thing. So if I'm going to a location and it's like, okay, my goal for tonight, like I just built this piece, I want to go test it out in this way, this way, this way, or I'm writing some like academic papers on a technique that I want to sort of like coin. So it's like, okay, I'm going to be doing research for this. So there's always a goal. I don't typically like frivolously use tech unless there's a very clear, concise, like written goal for it. And that definitely helps keep balance because then I'm not just putting things out of habit. And then it's like, well, why is this stuff out? Like, what is the point? I'm not videotaping it. I'm not doing anything like that. Sometimes I'll just put like a new seer down because I just want to see if it gets like a hit and that's it. But it's so funny because then it also like really diminishes anytime something does go off. I'm like, hey, cool, that works. All right, put it back in the bag. Unless I have a very clear cut goal for like to accomplish with tech, I don't really, I try to just always have something already down as to why I'm using it, what I'm using it for, and what I'm recording. Otherwise, yeah, you just put stuff out for habit and there's
Right.
I've definitely been side-eyed and I don't know, looked like the party pooper because I'm like, what's our goal here, guys? Like, what is all this stuff what are we doing? What are we doing? And it's like, oh, well, this responds to this. I'm like, no, I know how it all works. Like, why do we have it out? What are we doing with it? And it's just like,
What are we hoping to get from this?
yeah. And then it's kind of like what happened.
Tech can absolutely elevate an investigation, but only when it's used with intention. As Lauren said, it's not about chasing every blip or blinking light, it's really about knowing why you're using a tool, what it's designed to do, and what kind of data you're actually collecting. But even the most advanced equipment can't replace the most important tool we all have: our brain. That brings us to something Lauren is incredibly passionate about: critical thinking. Because in a field full of ambiguity, folklore, and emotion, it's our ability to question, analyze, and stay grounded that keeps us moving forward. So let's dig into that. We are all experiencing this, and there's so many different sides, from the ghost hunting, entertainment, fun side that is valid 100%. And I have to keep saying that because sometimes I have to balance myself, because I can get really kind of skeptical and be like, no, that's
They can
dust.
get really judgy about the people that want to have fun. There is no disrespect in having some fun.
No. And that's
For
the thing. I
sure.
think people also have a misconception that you can have a scientific critical eye or critical thinking or just apply, like you kind of broke down one of the experiences of, I think it was an Estes session, and how to
Oh yeah,
write
that
if
was
you
one of my
yeah.
lives.
I thought that was really interesting because they were like, see, this is the thing, we do Estes one way, but have we thought about playing around with it a little bit? And I say that word purposely, playing around with it, because that's where unique things happen, right? Again, like, no,
Mm-hmm.
this is the Estes method. This is the only way to do it. It's like, but it's
That's
not. Someone created that. Someone said, hey, what if we did this? Boom, Estes method. Play around with it. Let's see what
not
it
just
is.
that, but
Let's
if
see
you,
how it
depending
is.
on how do you want to apply it, things like that are it's a subjective technique, 100%. When
Yeah.
like it's all based on trusting the person that has the headphones on. I think a lot of people love it, and I think that it's important. That's why it was important for me to break it down in a way that we can make it a little bit more compelling, because
Yes.
it's also, if you make stuff and if it's just like, no, I just want to have fun, that's cool, that's great. But honestly, like, my fun is having like compelling experiences where like I can't be like, no, that was just a coincidence. Like, I
Yeah.
want to be wowed, okay?
And that's fair.
And
Like, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like my husband actually and I were talking about, I feel bad because every time someone starts an Estes session, we basically like leave. And, and I feel bad because it's not like I don't think it's valid, or it's just not our thing. I think the reason it isn't our thing is because of the subjectivity of it, because I struggle with not the trust aspect, which is high. I guess I'm just naive. I'm like, well, I would hope that they wouldn't, but it's not a malicious intent. I'll put it that
it's
way.
not malicious to not trust.
I
That's
trust the
just
person is there. I don't think they're doing anything with intent or like thought. I'm going to say this now. I do think, though, that as humans, our bodies are super receptive to things we might not even know we're picking up on, even blindfolded with headphones on. You'd be amazed how much you could actually hear and not realize maybe you're hearing it. The subtle, like, you feel people moving, you feel shifts of energy. It can happen on such a subconscious level. You don't even know you're reacting to something, right? That's why I struggle with it a little bit, because of all the variables that are so just, it's your personal experience basically, and we're an audience to that.
if you start to get visual confirmations in Estes method, I would stand behind the person and do the finger test. That's my favorite.
Yeah. That way there's no audio cue and they don't know. So it's kind of something that I find myself now getting more into as we go to places. I'm in that place now where we're veering away from like the ghost hunting events with multiple people, and we're doing more private, just to experience the building the way my husband and I want to experience it. And I'm really enjoying that, but I still love just going on a freaking ghost hunt and
Oh
seeing
my gosh.
people's reactions and seeing, especially first timers. That was my joy when I worked at Eloise, being a paranormal investigator there, taking a tour and having someone be their very first time ever in a location like that.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was just so cool seeing their face just being in the space and being, oh, I just want to bottle that up out of
I
excitement.
was at Eloise for the first time a couple weeks ago.
That was your first time going?
My
I didn't
first
know
time going.
that. Ooh, she's a beautiful lady.
I barely got to explore, so I will have to go
Oh,
back.
definitely.
It was a build event, which that's a big reason why I did the build events, was that like accessibility of you can do this kind of thing.
I like
Oh,
that. You're not
yeah.
gatekeeping anything, and it's like, that's really cool. So I've seen now you do things at different Paracons where you'll talk about the way the equipment works and do the build events. What's sort of your favorite thing to do when you're out at these cons? What is the thing that really gets you excited to go and do the circuit?
I really enjoy teaching people like at my table. Because I bring like a lot of gadgets. And well, you heard my spiel at Michigan with my Van de Graaff generator.
Yes, that
I
thing is
love
so cool.
doing that stuff. So I love if people come over, and it's, I don't know how I'm going to tie that in this year, because most of my events I'm just going and like advertising my stuff, because I obviously I don't sell anything at cons anymore. But a lot of it is talking to people, and but also like trying out new, I'm now pretty much able to speak at all the events that I go to, which is really great now.
That-
Trying out new talks, and it helps me to continue to research and learn. I don't love recycling my talks. So whenever I talk about stuff like this, there are people in the paranormal field who try to cite these concepts and these things in physics in order literally to create this credibility to either like sell events, sell experiences, or like sell tech. And I find that incredibly problematic. It's really driven me to want to spread just like this free education about this stuff, because even just knowing a little bit about it, you're more likely to be like, it's interesting that they said that. I remember like Lauren's basically saying that stuff doesn't exist unless it's within a vacuum. Like, how are these people doing it inside of this, like, I don't know, wooden box? And it just like, even if it's something small, and everything that I talk about, you can, Google, and there's some sort of research that you can find on it, or I'll send you the research that I did to find the information. And that was my big thing with, I did a whole talk about like logical fallacies, and I still have that talk too. It's called Are You There, Ghost? Talking about like logical fallacies and confirmation bias and like citing sources, and how we shouldn't be so shy about asking people for their research, because this is a field that does not have, any professional certifying agency. So we just have people out there that are just like, hey, this is what I know about. And it's like, how do you know that? Can I see the research on what makes you think that? And like, all ghosts are vibration. Like, okay, like, can you expand on that? Or the energy word, energy, it's energy. Okay, cool. Can we expand on that? What kind of energy? And I will say the talk that I'm doing at Parapsychon, I touched just a little bit on energy, because I did do a video on energy, because that's like the standard. Like, what do you think paranormal? It's energy. There are
Right. We always
so
talk
many
about
different
take my
kinds of
energy,
energy.
use this energy. Yeah.
Like, what kind of energy are we talking about here? So that's sort of what like pushed me in that direction to get into those more like complex topics. It's almost like people think that everyone in the paranormal is really stupid because we believe in ghosts. And that's kind of like this stereotype.
Yeah, it's
Everybody's,
not cool to be in paranormal, right? It's
yeah, like,
things we talk about behind, like, shh, don't let people know, but I do this.
yeah, like when you're at work and you're like, shh, not me though. I'm like, look at me. You can tell I'm probably into some weird shit. So it's whatever. But it's like people really, really think that so many people in the paranormal there's a stereotype. We're all dumb. We all think everything's a demon. We all think, somebody farts and it's a demon. Like it's a joke. We're a joke. And I do think that there are people in the field that try to capitalize on this general, like, quote unquote stupidity. And I hate seeing people fall into those traps just because of, and it's not even because of stupidity, it's because of trust issues. But it's because we think that somebody talks pretty, and it's me too, me included. Ask for my research, call me out, ask me more questions, ask me to expand on things. You should. We should. Ask me how my equipment works. Ask me what the false positives are. Ask me, like, in what other places can you see this technology? Like, ask the questions that I'm teaching you. I should be held accountable for that too.
And you shouldn't take offense if people do
No.
ask. And I think it's the ego that people
Yeah.
are like, how dare you? It's like you're asking to trip me up. You're asking because it's like, well, why do you know? I think people feel it's
Ask me
nefarious
the
when
hard
people
questions.
ask, right? I think people aren't willing to have that dialogue because they're either
No,
afraid
they're like,
of
well,
being
they're
wrong, like we
afraid.
said.
Not just that, though. I have absolutely asked questions, and there has been an effort to like make me feel stupid for asking the question. Like, you don't know this? No, I'm trying to make sure you know it. Like,
Right?
why
Yeah.
can't I ask the
That's
question
gross.
without you making me feel like I'm stupid for asking the question? So a lot of that was that. So that very open. And then, it's just the accountability factor, the trust factor. We should all feel so comfortable with asking questions. We will ask an empty ass room a million questions. And yet we have a hard time asking for like the accountability of the people that we're like giving our trust and our money to. And we shouldn't. You
That
should
is
ask.
pretty remarkable. Yeah,
We're
absolutely. And I think it's, again, we're afraid of that person being offended, but some people just are they're really afraid of either coming across as being combative or feeling like someone is attacking them if someone is
yeah,
asking them for it.
normalize asking for the research. There's nothing wrong. Because you know what? If that person gets angry at you for asking for the research or for asking how something works or for asking like more questions, then they're telling on themselves. Then that's great.
I'd
Then
be
you don't deal
excited
with
if
that
someone
person.
asked me how something worked. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to share with you all this. You want to know
Yeah.
where I came from? This is what I did. It's so cool. Let's look at this. Yeah, you think they'd be really geeked about just sharing the knowledge. It's just fascinating to me that in this community that we know, I feel like everyone keeps saying there's so much drama and turmoil and disconnect in this. It's like, but it doesn't
Nobody
have to
talks
be
to each
that.
other.
Yeah. And to me, this is like in the corporate world, communication is important. That's
Yeah.
across everything. And it just sort of, I sit there and go, but why does
I
it
think
have
it's
to be
I think
so
it's a
deep?
lack of communication. Absolutely. It's a lack of communication. It's funny because I'm not putting myself above any of this. Nobody actually likes to be criticized. It's more or less like trying to make myself feel better about being wrong. So practicing being wrong as like a power, because then you have so much to learn when you're wrong. But it's like, we don't like to feel dumb, and we don't like to feel wrong, and we don't like to feel attacked, and we don't like to feel like we're being questioned. And it's hard. And I have found myself when I'm talking with people, I have practiced just being like, you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure. Can you expand on that? I don't know if I'm fully familiar with what you're saying, kind of thing.
And that's where we'll pause at the intersection of curiosity, technology, and critical thinking. In this first part of our conversation, we've unpacked Lauren's origin story, how she approaches investigative tech with purpose, and why staying sharp and skeptical matters now more than ever in the paranormal field. But we're just getting started. In part 2, we'll dive into one of Lauren's most ambitious projects yet, the Madison installation, and we'll explore how meditation might be more than just a mindfulness practice. How science and the supernatural may not be as far apart as they seem, and what the future of this field could look like through Lauren's eyes. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. See you in part 2.